Hi, fourth grade. It's Mrs. Schaefer. Today we're going to read chapter 14 of Shiloh. You will need to have your Shiloh book with you and your vocab pages. You can have your comprehension questions handy, but remember to turn them over so that you are not tempted to answer the questions while we read and that you are focused more on reading fluently. For chapter 13, we were able to answer questions number 1 and the little extra. So let's talk about how chapter 13 ended and what happened in chapter 13. So for Marty, he was still contemplating how he was going to keep Shiloh. And he knew that Shiloh was starting to feel better and that he had to give Shiloh back. And it was the dawn of that morning that he had to return Shiloh that he came up with a plan. It was really, really early, and he went out on this walk through the woods to get to Judd Travers. And there was a lot of self-thinking that he was reflecting on, and then we heard a crack, a rifle going off. And it was then that Marty saw a deer that got shot out of season, and Judd Travers comes out into the meadow. So Marty witnessed Judd Travers shooting this deer out of season, and he couldn't move. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know if he should run or if he should go to the deer. So now let's go over the comprehension questions, and then we'll begin reading chapter 14. So you can answer questions numbers 1 and the little extra. So for number 2, multiple choice, it says in chapter 15, what does Judd tell Marty he needs to make their agreement legitimate? So we don't have to worry about that one just yet. But for number 3, a short answer, it says in chapter 14, what is the deal that Marty and Judd make? So remember that this deal that Marty and Judd make has 2 parts. So I expect 2 complete sentences, as this short answer has 2 answers. Now the long answer says at the end of the book, so we're not going to worry about that just yet, but let's keep it in mind. So at the end of the book, Marty is lying down looking up at the sky and thinking about how nothing is as simple as one guesses. He says, the good part is I saved Shiloh and opened my eyes some. What do you think Marty means when he says, I opened my eyes some? Remember, you are to give your opinion and then a supporting detail from the book. Now, with your comprehension questions put to the side, I would like for you to take out your vocab pages so that we can go over any vocab that comes up. Go ahead and open your books to chapter 14 and we'll begin reading. Chapter 14. He's wearing this army camouflage shirt, a brown cap, and the weirdest grin that could fit on a human face. Woo-wee, he says, holding the rifle up with one hand as he plows through the weeds. I got her, woo-wee! I know he wasn't out shooting rabbits and happened to get a doe instead because he doesn't have his hounds with him. Judd Travers had gone out that morning with the clear intention of getting himself a deer. I also know that if the game warden finds out about it, Judd's in big trouble because the deer he shot out of season wasn't even a buck. Oh, a vocab word. What is it? Warden. The definition of warden is an officer in charge. Let's continue reading. He slogs over through waist-high weeds to where the doe lays. Bending over, he looks at her, walks around her a little piece, then says, woo-wee, again, soft-like. That's when I come out of the woods. He's got his back to me now, his hands on the doe's front legs, trying to see can he pull her himself. Drags her a little way and stops. And when he looks up again, I'm right beside him. He whirls around. "Where'd you come from?" he says. "Was on my way over to see you," I tell him. And for the first time, standing next to Judd Travers, I feel taller than I really am. What does that mean, to feel taller than he really is? Pretty confident. He looks at me a moment, like he don't know if he's glad I'm there or not. Then I guess he figures me being there, only a kid, don't matter. "Look what I got," he says. "Found her eating at my garden this morning, and I chased her over here." "That's a lie," I say. "I was back in the woods watching her eat. She was coming down from the hills the other way. You went out deer hunting for anything you could get." "Well, supposing I did," says Judd Travers, and he hates me worse'n snot. "Deer ain't in season, that's what," I answer. "There's a $200 fine for killing a doe." Judd Travers is staring at me like he's about to crack me across the mouth. Way we're raised around here, children don't talk back to grown folks. Don't hardly talk much at all, in fact. Learn to listen. Keep your mouth shut. Let the grown folks do the talking. And here I am, shooting off my mouth at 5:30 in the morning to a man holding a rifle. Am I crazy or what? "None unless the game warden finds out." There's not," Judd says. "And who's going to tell him? You?" All at once, I realize I got Judd Travers right where I want him. One way you look at it, it's my duty to report a killed doe. The way folks up here look at it, though, that's snitching. And if I could tell, but bargain not to. It's something else again. It's blackmail. But like I said, I got to the place. I'd do most anything to save Shiloh. "Yeah," I say, my heart pounding like crazy. "I'll tell. There's a free number to call." "There is, too. It's on Dad's hunting regulation papers. Boy, I sure didn't know I was going to step into all this when I come up here this morning." Now Judd's looking at me good. Eyes narrowed down to little slits. "Your pa put you up to this?" "No. This is me talking." "Well, ain't you something now? And who's to believe you?" "I'll get the game warden up here. Show him the spot the doe was hit, the blood, and when he finds the deer at your place, he'll believe me." The words are coming out quicker than I can think, almost. "I'll tell him he was eating my garden. And I'll say different. The new game warden won't make any allowance even if the deer was eating your garden. You just don't shoot deer out of season, no way, especially a doe." When Judd's really angry, and his words come at me like bees. "What you trying to do, boy? Start up trouble? You think I can't put you in your place mighty quick?" "So what you going to do?" I ask. "Shoot me?" Travers is so surprised his jaw drops. But I'm cooking now. Nothing can stop me. Braver than I ever been in my life. "Going to shoot me like that dog I found up here 6 months back with a bullet in his head?" Travers stares some more. "I know whose bullet that was, Judd, and I told Dad, and if folks find me up here with a bullet in me, Dad'll know whose bullet that is too." I can't hardly believe the words that's coming out of my mouth. Been scared most of my life of Judd Travers, and here I am, half his size, talking like a grown person. It's because I know Shiloh's still got a chance. "So what you waiting for?" Judd says finally. "Go get the game warden, and when I don't move, he says, 'Come off it, Marty. Here, you take one of those legs, I'll take another. We'll drag it to my place, and I'll give you half the meat. And don't tell me your ma won't be glad to get it. I don't want the meat. I want Shiloh.'" Now Judd's really surprised and whistles through his teeth. "Boy, you just come up here to set me up, didn't you? Didn't have an idea in this world you was out with your rifle," I tell him. And that's one of the first truths I told in 2 weeks. "I come up here because it's Sunday, the day you said to bring your dog back. And I wanted you to know you gotta fight me first to get him. Now I'm telling you, I mean to keep him. And you expect to keep that deer without a fine? You'll make the trade." "Whoa," says Travers. "That's no kind of trade at all. If I hadn't got me a deer this morning, what would you have bargained with then?" I didn't have an answer to that, because I hadn't been thinking about a deal. Judd had already said he wouldn't sell Shiloh. Judd's eyes narrowed down even more till it almost looks like he's asleep. "I just bet you would tell the game warden, too." "Jesus' name, I would." "And you're saying if I let you keep my hunting dog, you're going to keep this deer a secret?" I begin to see now I'm no better than Judd Travers, willing to look the other way to get something I want. But the something is Shiloh. "Yes, I will," I tell him, not feeling all that great about it. "Well, you got to do more than that, boy, because I paid $35 for that dog, and I want $40 to let him go." For the first time I see a thin ray of hope that maybe he'll let me buy Shiloh. "I'll get you the money somehow, by and by," I promise. "I don't want the money by and by. I want it now, and you haven't got it now. You work for me and pay it off. You make a deal with Judd Travers, and you're only 11 years old. You take what you can get. But all I'm thinking is, dog." "You got a bargain," I tell Judd, and now my feet want to dance. My face wants to smile, but I don't dare let the delight show through. "You listen here," says Judd. "I'll pay you $2 an hour, and that comes to 20 hours to earn $40. And the work ain't easy." "I'll do it," I say. "Beginning now," says Judd, and I can tell he's getting a bit edgy that someone else might come through the field, wondering about those rifle shots, and see how he got a doe. We have a vocab word. What is it? Edgy. Edgy meaning nervous or uneasy. "Help me get this deer to my trailer." Before we continue reading, I wanted to go over one of the comprehension questions, because we talked about how Marty and Judd had made a deal. So, how much money did Judd want for Shiloh? And then in your answer, you need to tell me how that's going to happen. So there is a certain cost that Judd wants, not what he paid for Shiloh, but what he wants for Shiloh, for Marty to have him. And so what would Marty have to do? He has to work for this many amount of hours and this amount of money per hour. And it will be things that he will do for Judd to work. Okay, so how much money is Shiloh going to cost Marty? How much per hour would Marty have to work, and for how many hours to earn that money? Okay, so that is your short answer. Let's continue reading. "I'm so glad to be getting Shiloh. I can hardly think straight. But I'm thinking straight enough as I help drag that doe to Judd's to know that by letting him get away with this, I'm putting other deer in danger. He killed this one out of season. He'll figure maybe he can kill some more. To save Shiloh, I'm making it harder for the deer." I swallow. All I gotta do, though, is think of the way he'd look at me. I ever give him back to Judd, and then I get on with my job. When we get to the trailer at last, we carry the deer around to the 3-sided shed Judd's got in his backyard. First thing Judd does is bleed the doe, keep the meat from spoiling. Then he goes out and messes up the tracks with his foot, kicking up the grass where we'd matted it down and covering the trail of blood with dust. "I get home from work every day at 3, Judd says, "and I want you here when I pull up. You work for me 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. I want that wood back there stacked. I want the weeds cut and the grass mowed. I want my beans picked, the corn hoed. Whatever I think of to be done, that's what you do. And I want you here starting tomorrow." "I'll be here," I says. "But I want it in writing that after I do 20 hours work for you, Shiloh belongs to me." Travers grunts and goes in his trailer. He comes out with a piece of grocery sack and the words Beagle hunting dog to Marty Preston for 20 hours work, J. Travers. It occurs to me suddenly that maybe after I do the work, he'll try to pay me off with one of his other dogs. Right, Shiloh, I tell him. He gives me a pained look and crosses out Beagle, writes Shiloh in its place, but don't spell it right. Leaves off the H at the end. I take the paper and put it in my pocket. I'll be here tomorrow, I say. And you ever tell anyone about this, dear boy, you're going to be more'n sorry you opened your lips. You got my word, I say, which, considering all the lying I've been doing lately, didn't seem like it amounted to much. It did, though. I walk away from Judd's trailer in a sort of zigzag line, half expecting a bullet in my back any moment, even though I'm pretty sure he wouldn't. Soon as I'm out of sight, though, I race through the woods, heart going thumpity-thump. Can't keep the smile back no longer. Shiloh's mine. The words keep coming back again and again. He's safe. Should feel even more joyful, though. Thought once if I could just get Shiloh for my own, it would be the finest day of my life. In a way it is. In a way it isn't. Could be Judd gave him 'cause he couldn't think of nothing else at the moment to do. Said I could have Shiloh just 'cause he needed some help with that deer. Could be that once he got rid of the evidence, he'd tell me to go ahead and get the warden, that I wasn't to have the dog. Vocab word. What is it? Evidence. The definition for evidence is something that is proof or fact. Let's continue reading. Could even say he never wrote that on the grocery sack, that I'd wrote it myself. I don't think so, though. What worries me most is that Judd could go through with the bargain, give Shiloh to me, but then someday, when Shiloh's running free in the woods by himself, Judd might put a bullet in his head just to spite me. That's the end of chapter 14. At this time, you can go back to answer your comprehension questions. You can answer questions number 1, 3, and the little extra. I'll read with you next time. Bye.